Ethan stared at the heavy oak door of the hotel room, his palms slick with sweat, even though the air conditioning was blasting cold air across his skin. In less than 12 hours, he was supposed to be standing at the altar with Sarah, saying the vows that would tie their lives together forever. But right now, all he could think about was the man on the other side of this door. He knocked softly, and when Ryan opened it, wearing nothing but faded jeans and that familiar crooked grin, the years melted away in an instant, leaving Ethan feeling raw and exposed like he hadn't since their college days back at the University of Illinois. "Hey, man," Ryan said, stepping aside to let him in, his voice warm and steady like it always had been. "Didn't expect you to show up tonight of all nights. Thought you'd be rehearsing your I-do's or something." Ethan forced a laugh that sounded hollow, even to his own ears, as he stepped inside the dimly lit suite, the Chicago skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows like a million distant promises he wasn't sure he could keep anymore. The room smelled faintly of Ryan's cologne, that same woodsy scent that had lingered in their old dorm room whenever they pulled all-nighters studying or just talking about everything and nothing. Ethan dropped onto the edge of the king-sized bed, loosening his tie as if it were choking him, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Ryan grabbed 2 beers from the mini-fridge, handing one over without asking, and settled into the armchair across from him, his dark eyes studying Ethan with that quiet intensity that always made him feel seen in ways no one else ever had. "You look like hell, Ethan. Wedding jitters or something bigger?" Ryan asked finally, twisting the cap off his own bottle with a soft pop. Ethan took a long pull from the cold beer, the bitterness grounding him as memories crashed over him like waves on Lake Michigan. He remembered their freshman year, how Ryan had been the first person to make him laugh after the homesickness hit hard, how they'd stayed up until dawn debating politics and movies and the meaning of life while the rest of the campus slept. Back then, Ethan had told himself the warmth he felt whenever Ryan clapped him on the shoulder or crashed on his bed after a late party was just friendship, the kind every guy needed. But now, with Sarah waiting downstairs in her own room after the rehearsal dinner, those old feelings were rising like a tide he could no longer ignore. His parents had driven in from their small town in central Illinois that afternoon, his mother fussing over the flowers and his father clapping him on the back with proud words about carrying on the family name. They loved Sarah, saw her as the perfect match for their only son, the steady accountant who would give them grandchildren and Sunday dinners filled with laughter. Ethan had convinced himself for years that this was what he wanted too, that the quiet doubts were normal, that everyone felt a little trapped before the big day. But sitting here with Ryan, who had moved to New York after graduation and built a life as an openly gay graphic designer, Ethan felt the cracks in his carefully constructed world widening. "I don't know, Ryan," he admitted at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's like everything is set. The venue, the rings, the cake. Sarah's amazing. She's kind and smart, and she gets me. But tonight, after the rehearsal, I couldn't go back to my room. I kept thinking about you being in the same hotel, and how we haven't really talked like this in years." Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his expression softening with genuine concern. "You know I'm here for whatever you need, right? No judgment. We've been through too much crap together for that." As the minutes stretched into hours, the conversation flowed easier, drifting from surface topics to deeper waters. Ethan found himself recounting the pressure from his conservative family, how his father had once joked about real men settling down with wives, how his mother still sent him articles about successful marriages whenever he mentioned any uncertainty. Ryan listened, nodding occasionally, sharing bits of his own journey since coming out senior year, the fear he'd felt telling his own parents and the freedom that followed once he stopped hiding. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic, but inside the suite, the world narrowed to just the two of them and the unspoken tension humming between every word. Ethan glanced at the clock on the nightstand, shocked to see it was already past midnight. Sarah had texted earlier asking if he was okay, and he'd replied with a quick, just grabbing a drink with an old friend, "See you in the morning." The lie sat heavy in his stomach, but the truth felt even heavier, pressing against his ribs like a secret too big to contain. Ryan stood up to stretch, his shirt riding up slightly to reveal a strip of toned skin that Ethan quickly looked away from, his pulse quickening in a way that felt both terrifying and familiar. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight, Ethan," Ryan said softly, sitting back down closer this time. "But whatever it is, you've got me." For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan believed that. The night wore on with more stories, more laughter mixed with quiet confessions, and as the first hints of dawn began to creep through the curtains, Ethan realized he hadn't thought about the wedding once in the last hour. The weight of the tuxedo hanging in his own room across the hall suddenly felt like chains rather than celebration. And in that moment, surrounded by the steady presence of the one person who had never asked him to be anyone but himself, Ethan wondered if he had been running from the truth all along. The conversation didn't slow as the hours ticked by, each story pulling Ethan deeper into the past he had tried so hard to lock away. Ryan recounted the day he had finally told Ethan about his feelings during their junior year spring break, how he had chickened out at the last second and turned it into a joke about some girl from class instead. Ethan remembered that night vividly now, the way his stomach had flipped when Ryan started talking, the relief mixed with disappointment he hadn't let himself name. "I thought you were straight as an arrow back then," Ryan said with a chuckle, but there was a hint of something deeper in his tone, a question hanging unspoken between them. Ethan set his empty beer bottle on the carpet, running a hand through his hair as the weight of that memory settled over him. "I thought I was too," he admitted, the words tasting like freedom and fear all at once. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, a reminder that Chicago never truly slept, much like the turmoil churning inside him. His phone buzzed on the bed beside him, Sarah's name lighting up the screen with a simple "miss you already." "Can't wait for tomorrow." He silenced it without replying, guilt twisting in his chest like a knife. But the pull to stay right here with Ryan felt stronger than any obligation. They moved to the small balcony then, the cool night air washing over them as they leaned against the railing, the lake shimmering under the moonlight in the distance. Ryan talked about his life in New York, the relationships that had taught him what real connection looked like, the therapy sessions that helped him accept himself without shame. Ethan listened, nodding, feeling every word echo in the empty spaces of his own heart. He had dated Sarah for 3 years, proposed after his parents kept hinting it was time, and built a comfortable life with her in their Lincoln Park apartment. She made him laugh, supported his career at the accounting firm, and never pushed when he seemed distant. But comfort wasn't the same as the spark he felt right now. Just standing next to Ryan, their shoulders brushing occasionally as they talked. "My dad called earlier today," Ethan said quietly, staring out at the city lights. "Told me how proud he is that I'm finally settling down, becoming the man he always wanted me to be. Said the family name depends on it." Ryan turned to face him, his expression serious in the dim glow from the street below. "And what do you want, Ethan? Not what your parents want, not what society says is normal. Just you." The question hung there, heavy and honest, forcing Ethan to confront the truth he had buried since that college party, where he had almost kissed Ryan after too many drinks, only to pull back and blame it on the alcohol. Now, with the wedding looming like a deadline he couldn't outrun, the denial felt exhausting. They stayed on the balcony until the sky began to lighten to a soft gray, sharing more stories of missed opportunities and what-ifs. Ryan admitted he had never stopped caring, that seeing Ethan again at the hotel check-in yesterday had stirred up old feelings he thought were long gone. Ethan felt his throat tighten, the words he wanted to say caught somewhere between fear and longing. When they finally went back inside, Ryan suggested ordering room service for a late-night snack, and as they ate burgers and fries on the floor like they used to in dorms, the conversation turned lighter again, filled with laughter that eased the tension just enough. But underneath it all, Ethan could feel the shift happening, the careful walls he had built around his identity beginning to crumble under Ryan's steady gaze. His mind raced with images of the morning ahead, the church filled with family and friends, Sarah walking down the aisle in her white dress, and the vows he wasn't sure he could say with honesty anymore. Ryan noticed the distant look in his eyes and reached over to squeeze his shoulder, the touch sending a jolt through Ethan that he didn't pull away from. "Whatever you decide, I'm not going anywhere, Ryan said simply. And in that moment, Ethan believed him more than he had believed anything in years. The night blurred into early morning, their voices growing softer as fatigue set in, but neither wanted to end the connection they had rediscovered. Ethan glanced at his phone again, seeing missed calls from his mother and a text from his best man asking if everything was set for the bachelor party that never happened because he had canceled it weeks ago, claiming work. The lies were piling up, each one heavier than the last. And here with Ryan, they felt impossible to maintain. As the first rays of sunrise filtered through the curtains, Ethan realized he hadn't slept at all, and neither had Ryan, yet the exhaustion fell secondary to the clarity slowly dawning on him. This night wasn't just a reunion. It was a reckoning. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the hotel suite in soft pinks and golds that did little to calm the storm inside Ethan's chest. Ryan had dozed off for a short while on the armchair, his head tilted back and breathing even, giving Ethan a rare moment to study him without the pressure of conversation. The years had been kind to Ryan, sharpening his features into something more confident, more at peace with himself than Ethan had ever felt. Memories flooded back again, sharper now in the quiet morning light, of the time Ryan had defended him during a frat party gone wrong, standing up to guys who mocked Ethan's quieter nature. Back then, Ethan had thanked him with a bro hug, but inside, that protection had felt like something deeper, something he pushed away because his upbringing didn't allow space for it. A soft knock at the door startled him, and Ethan froze, heart hammering as he checked the peephole. It was just room service with the coffee they had ordered earlier, but the interruption brought the real world crashing back. Sarah would be waking soon, expecting him to meet for breakfast before the final preparations. His parents were probably already at the church, double-checking every detail with the planner. The thought made his stomach churn. He signed for the tray and carried it inside, the rich aroma filling the room as Ryan stirred awake with a sleepy smile. "You didn't have to let me crash like that," Ryan said, rubbing his eyes and accepting a steaming mug. "But thanks. Feels like old times." They sipped in comfortable silence for a while, the city waking up below them with honking taxis and distant train rumbles. Ethan set his coffee down, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "What if I'm not who everyone thinks I am, Ryan? What if this wedding? What if it's all wrong because I'm wrong for her?" Ryan didn't flinch, didn't offer empty reassurances. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice calm and steady. "Then you owe it to yourself and to Sarah to figure that out before you say those vows. Hiding doesn't make it go away. I learned that the hard way." The honesty in Ryan's words hit Ethan like a wave, stirring up the guilt he had carried for years about the subtle distance he kept from Sarah, the way he sometimes pulled back during intimate moments because something always felt missing. He told Ryan about the family vacations where his father drilled into him the importance of being a provider, a husband, a father in the traditional sense, how coming home from college after Ryan's coming out had led to awkward dinners where his mother prayed extra hard at grace. Ryan shared his own struggles, the job he almost lost in his early career because of prejudice, the friends who drifted away when he stopped pretending. As they talked, Ethan felt the pieces of his identity shifting into place, no longer jagged fragments, but something whole and terrifyingly real. His phone buzzed again, this time a call from Sarah. He stepped onto the balcony to answer, forcing a cheerful tone as he assured her everything was fine, that he had just lost track of time catching up with Ryan. "He's an old college buddy. You remember me mentioning him?" "Yeah, we'll meet you downstairs in a bit." The lie burned, but hanging up, he realized he couldn't keep doing this. Back inside, Ryan was pacing slowly, sensing the shift. "You don't have to decide everything right now, but you can't walk down that aisle carrying this weight either." They spent the next hour dissecting every doubt. Every moment Ethan had questioned his feelings, but chalked them up to stress or cold feet. Ryan didn't push, didn't declare anything, but his presence alone made Ethan feel braver than he had in years. The clock showed 8 a.m., and the wedding was set for 11. Ethan stared at the tuxedo bag hanging in the closet across the hall in his mind, imagining slipping it on and pretending everything was perfect. But here, in this room with Ryan, pretending felt impossible. They ordered more coffee and talked about the future, not the wedding one, but the one Ethan might choose if fear didn't hold him back. Ryan described his life in New York, the community that had welcomed him, the pride parades where he marched without shame. Ethan pictured himself there, not hiding, not performing for his family or society. The thought both excited and terrified him. As the morning progressed, a text from his father arrived. "Son, your mother and I are so proud. This is the start of your real life." Ethan showed it to Ryan, who simply nodded. Real life isn't what they say it is. It's what you make it. The conversation deepened into discussions of societal pressures in America, the subtle ways being different could isolate you, the strength it took to stand tall anyway. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes for the first time, not from sadness exactly, but from a relief of finally voicing what he had silenced for so long. Ryan reached across the small table and took his hand briefly, a gesture of support that lingered just long enough to feel like a promise. By 9 a.m., Ethan knew he couldn't go through with the ceremony as planned. The decision wasn't fully formed yet, but the seed had taken root in the fertile ground of this unexpected night with his old friend. The city outside bustled with normalcy, but inside the suite, Ethan's world was transforming. The tension in the suite thickened as the clock approached 10, each minute bringing the wedding closer like an oncoming train Ethan couldn't outrun. Ryan suggested they take a short walk to clear their heads, and Ethan agreed, grateful for any excuse to delay the inevitable. They slipped out a side entrance of the hotel, avoiding the main lobby where wedding guests might spot them, and wandered the nearby streets of downtown Chicago. The morning sun warmed their faces, people hurrying to work or tourists snapping photos of the architecture, oblivious to the crisis unfolding in Ethan's heart. As they walked, Ryan pointed out little things, a street performer playing guitar, a couple holding hands without fear, reminding Ethan that life could look different if he chose it. "Remember when we skipped that econ final to go to that protest downtown?" Ryan asked, laughing at the memory. Ethan smiled despite everything, recalling how Ryan had dragged him along, teaching him about standing up for what mattered. That day had planted seeds of courage he was only now harvesting. They stopped at a small park bench overlooking the river, the water reflecting the skyscrapers in shimmering ripples. Ethan poured out more of his fears, the worry about hurting Sarah, disappointing his parents, facing the whispers from relatives back home. Ryan listened, offering stories from his own coming out that showed the pain, but also the growth on the other side. "It wasn't easy. My dad didn't speak to me for 6 months. But when he finally did, it was because he saw I was happier, more myself. Families adapt, Ethan, or they don't. Either way, you can't live for them." The words resonated deeply, stirring memories of family dinners where his uncle had made offhand comments about those people that made Ethan shrink inside. He had laughed along then, but now the shame burned. His phone vibrated constantly now, texts from the groomsmen, his mother asking if he was on his way to the church. He ignored them, focusing instead on the man beside him who had never asked him to be less than honest. As they walked back toward the hotel, the conversation turned to what came next. Not plans exactly, but possibilities. Ryan talked about visiting New York together, exploring museums and coffee shops without hiding. Ethan pictured it, the freedom of walking hand in hand, and the image didn't scare him like it once would have. Back in the suite, the reality hit harder. Ethan changed into a casual shirt, abandoning the tuxedo idea entirely, and sat with Ryan as they faced the hardest part, the calls he knew he had to make. First Sarah, then his parents. Ryan offered to step out, but Ethan asked him to stay, drawing strength from his steady presence. The call to Sarah was the toughest, her voice bright at first, then cracking with confusion as he explained he couldn't go through with it. Not today, not like this. She asked questions he struggled to answer fully, the tears in her voice breaking his heart even as he knew it was the right choice. "Is there someone else?" she asked quietly, and Ethan hesitated before saying yes, though not in the way she meant. The conversation ended with her asking for space, a request he granted with a heavy promise to talk soon. His parents' call came next, a whirlwind of shock and anger from his father, tears from his mother, accusations of selfishness that stung but didn't sway him. Ryan sat quietly through it all, a silent anchor. When the calls ended, Ethan felt drained but lighter, as if a massive weight had lifted from his shoulders. They spent the rest of the morning talking through the emotions, the grief for what could have been, the excitement for what might come. Ryan shared how his own family had eventually come around, offering hope that time could heal some wounds. By noon, with the wedding time past and guests probably dispersing in confusion, Ethan and Ryan ordered lunch in the room. The meal simple, but shared with a new intimacy. The afternoon brought more honest talks about identity, about the courage it took to choose authenticity over expectation in a world that often demanded conformity. Ethan realized this night with Ryan hadn't created his feelings but uncovered them, giving him a space to grow into the man he was meant to be. As the sun climbed higher, the bond between them deepened, not rushed but built on years of unspoken understanding. Ethan knew the road ahead would have challenges, family reconciliation, explaining to friends, rebuilding his life, but with Ryan beside him as a friend first and perhaps something more later, he felt ready. The misunderstanding with Sarah lingered as a painful reminder of the hurt caused by his delay in facing the truth, but he vowed to handle it with kindness. Ryan never pressured, never assumed, simply supported. By evening, as they watched the city lights come on from the balcony once more, Ethan understood that this unexpected night had been the turning point he didn't know he needed. The evening settled over Chicago like a gentle blanket, but inside Ethan the emotions still swirled in high gear. Ryan suggested they grab dinner somewhere quiet away from the hotel, and they chose a small Italian place a few blocks away, the kind with checkered tablecloths and soft lighting that felt safe for heavy conversations. Over pasta and wine, Ethan unpacked more layers of his internal conflict, the years of dating women because it was expected, the quiet envy he felt watching gay couples in public without realizing why. Ryan shared his own past heartbreaks, the betrayals from friends who couldn't accept him, the triumphs of finding a community that celebrated him. Their conversation wove between past and present, building a bridge of understanding that made Ethan feel less alone than ever. Back at the hotel later, a surprise knock came from Ethan's best man, who had tracked him down worried after the canceled ceremony. The confrontation was tense at first, questions flying about what happened, but Ethan stood his ground, explaining in careful terms that he had realized he couldn't marry Sarah because his heart wasn't fully in it, that there were truths about himself he had to face. The friend listened, shocked, but ultimately supportive in his own way, promising to help smooth things with the group. Ryan waited patiently in the suite, and when Ethan returned, the relief was palpable. They talked late into the night again, this time about forgiveness and moving forward, the sacrifices everyone makes in life, and the ones worth making for happiness. Ethan reflected on the family pressure that had shaped him, the societal norms in America that still made coming out feel like a battlefield for many men. Ryan offered perspective from his experiences, emphasizing that growth came from facing those conflicts head-on. As midnight approached once more, a text from Sarah arrived, calmer now, asking to meet the next day to talk properly. Ethan agreed, knowing it was necessary for closure and healing. Ryan encouraged him, reminding him that doing the right thing, even when hard, was part of becoming who he truly was. The night ended with them watching an old movie on the laptop, laughing at familiar scenes from their college days, the camaraderie evolving into something warmer, more intentional. Ethan felt the shift, the possibility of romance not forced, but natural, born from years of genuine connection. The misunderstandings of the past, the almost moments they had ignored, now felt like stepping stones to this clarity. By morning of the second day, Ethan woke to find Ryan already up, making coffee and planning a quiet day to process everything. They discussed practical steps, Ethan calling his boss for time off, Ryan offering his New York apartment as a temporary escape if needed. The family fallout continued with more calls, some angry, some confused, but Ethan's resolve held firm, strengthened by the man who had been his anchor through it all. A walk along the lakefront brought fresh air and deeper talks about identity, about how love between men could be just as real and profound as any other. Ethan confronted his own biases internalized from years of denial, emerging stronger on the other side. The climax of the emotional storm came when he met Sarah at Neutral Cafe, the conversation raw and tearful, but honest. She expressed her pain, but also her understanding after his explanation, wishing him well even as her heart broke. Walking away from that meeting, Ethan felt the weight of guilt lift slightly, replaced by a quiet determination to live truthfully. Ryan was waiting back at the hotel, no questions asked, just open arms for support. That evening, as they shared a simple meal in the suite, the bond between them solidified into something undeniably romantic, though still tender and new. The night brought peace, the high point of Ethan's journey from denial to acceptance, marked by the choice he had made to prioritize his truth. Weeks blurred into months after that fateful night in Chicago, but Ethan carried the lessons from those intense hours with Ryan like a compass guiding him forward. He moved temporarily to New York, crashing on Ryan's couch at first while sorting through the pieces of his old life and building something new. The family reconciliation came slowly, with long phone calls and a visit home where his mother hugged him tightly despite her confusion, and his father eventually shook his hand with gruff acceptance. Sarah found her own path to healing, and they parted as friends, a testament to the kindness that could survive even the deepest hurts. Work adapted too, Ethan transitioning to a role that allowed more flexibility, free from the pressure to conform. Through it all, Ryan stood by him, their friendship blooming naturally into a relationship built on mutual respect and shared history. They took walks in Central Park, cooked meals together in the small apartment, and talked endlessly about dreams and fears, the emotional intimacy deepening with every passing day. One sunny afternoon in the park, Ethan turned to Ryan and said the words he had held back for years. "I love you, not just as a friend. I always have." Ryan's smile was all the answer he needed, pulling him into a warm embrace under the bright sky, the moment pure and full of promise. Life wasn't perfect. Society still threw challenges their way. Old friends drifted or stayed, but Ethan had grown into a man who faced them with courage. He volunteered at LGBTQ centers, sharing his story to help others avoid the years of silence he endured. The journey from that hotel room to this place of authenticity taught him that true strength came from vulnerability, that love in all its forms deserved a chance. Family gatherings evolved, with Ryan welcomed gradually, his presence proving that connections could bridge divides. Ethan reflected often on the night that changed everything, the shocking realization that spending those hours with his male friend had been the bravest choice he ever made. It wasn't about betrayal or impulse, but about finally listening to his heart after years of ignoring its whispers. As they sat on their balcony one evening watching the city lights, much like that first night, but now together openly, Ethan felt a profound peace. The sacrifices had been worth it, the misunderstandings forgiven, the growth undeniable. He had emerged stronger, more compassionate, ready for whatever came next with the man who had always seen the real him. Looking at Ryan, he knew this was home. True or false? Is it better to live a lie to keep everyone else happy, or to risk everything for your own truth?